Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 45-minute webinar, Unlocking Asset Visibility with RFID. Smarter tracking, faster counts, real ROI. The first half hour will be a discussion by our three speakers, who I will introduce you to in a minute. But based on your engagement with lots of questions during the past RFID webinars, we dedicated the last 15 minutes to address these. So please get them ready. Two housekeeping items before we get started. The session is being recorded, and you will receive a link over the next few days by email. Secondly, please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A section, and we will be addressing these during the last 15 minutes. For those of you who are just familiar with barcodes or OCR Canada, I want to quickly introduce you to our new brand, Levada. First, we continue to offer the same range of products and services you know today. Our partnership with leading manufacturers gives you an unrivaled access to the best devices on the market, enhanced by service and support to keep your organization moving forward. With over 200,000 customers worldwide, including 84% of the Fortune 500 served, Levada exists to elevate your potential by providing strategies, solutions, and services to power modern environments so you can rise as an enduring force in a world of motion. Levada combines our established expertise with four leading capabilities, including supply chain visibility with RFID, or visibility with RFID, the area of today's webinar. Asset visibility is a powerful tool to find and track valuable equipment and tools with a full RFID solution of software, devices, and the world's best performing tags. Let me introduce you to the speakers. As a principal RFID solutions architect with Levada, Tom O'Boyle designs, integrates, and deploys RFID solutions for a wide range of industries, including supply chain, manufacturing, healthcare, education, and retail. With over 20 years of RFID experience, Tom has been an industry leader and early adopter of RFID technology. His work drove the adoption of RFID solutions for wide area coverage, portal and dock door transactions, and software algorithms to improve read event data. Colin Black has been solving RFID and other auto identification and data capture solutions for nearly a decade. Working on the RFID engineering side for the first half of his career, he developed custom products for many industrial applications, which include designing custom antennas. Since moving over to the business development or sales side of the business, Colin has helped architect a wide variety of RFID deployments to small and medium businesses up to Fortune 100 companies. And last but not least, as general manager at ARK Business Systems, Cassidy Albertson now leads the charge in bringing RFID innovations to life. His background in software engineering gives him a unique edge in turning complex technical areas into real-world solutions that improve efficiency and visibility across industries. Welcome, and Tom, please take it away.
Thanks, Edwin. So let's kind of go through our agenda for today and what we're going to be talking about in the session. First and foremost, we're going to talk a little bit about what asset visibility is and how we define asset visibility. We will touch on some of the challenges associated with achieving asset visibility within organizations, because sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not so easy. We'll discuss how RFID can be an enabling technology for some of the folks, and we'll hit on some of the possible RFID solutions and where they might fit. We will describe the process we follow to ensure that we're matching the right technology with the right situation. And we will also have an offer for each one of you at the end of the webinar today. So what is asset visibility? Asset visibility is a powerful tool to track, find, and report on valuable equipment and tools. Having asset visibility gives an organization a place to look quickly and correctly determine what's on hand, where it is, and in some cases, who has it or who is assigned to it. It is the ability to have the asset data readily available when you need it. All organizations need to determine what assets they have. Many keep a list in the top drawer or just happen to know what they have, but usually these methods aren't very well kept and aren't very accurate. Why each organization needs the data really depends upon a lot of factors. Probably the most common factor we see is senior management requesting a list so that they can build a valuation for tax or accounting purposes. Sometimes it's operations who is trying to make sure that they have all the proper assets available to complete a task or to make sure that they can complete an order. And other times it's driven by customers trying to confirm that their program has the right assets, or in some cases, those assets are actually owned by that customer. But whatever the reason, we as a collective group end up with a task. We have to determine where these things are and how many we have and who has it. And usually that's when the mad scramble starts. That usually involves building a list of expected assets, counting them, verifying them, and writing them down where they're located. It's easy to say, but it is pretty time consuming to implement, especially if the assets are numerous and spread out. Not to mention if an asset ID or a serial ID needs to get captured, then verifying and counting takes a major labor toll to us. So, Colin, I know that you've had some experience in this area. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what it takes to kind of track down assets or tools and where they're located.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. So I think, again, it's important to just break down when we're talking asset visibility. It's all about how do we make the assets within the organization visible to the entire organization. So RFID, as we've already mentioned, is a technology that does this very, very well. It allows companies to capture the data autonomously, and that's what allows them to be effective at acquiring the data into their systems. So, but what makes RFID so effective is the fact that it really kind of bridges the gap and it assigns physical assets with an actual digital identifier, which is what drives the entire asset management platform. When you're looking at tools or other assets and management assets around your organization, it's important to capture some of the location information, which is what asset management solutions and software does, especially at times of check-in and check-out, which is kind of a vital metric when you're looking at tool tracking and other management properties. So that type of location data is a pivotal metric for a lot of companies that they study, and it can be captured with RFID, but there's some other benefits and other metrics that can be tracked. And Tom, I think you were going to address some of those around whether it's usage and custodial management.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the benefits of true asset visibility, it does give us historical data. So we are able to take a look at an asset and we're able to see how often it has been used, and in many cases, who's had it and who had it during certain processes. That how often it's been used is really comes into play when we see customers who have assets that are leased. As an example, they may lease some items, and towards the end of the lease, they can determine, do I need more of that item or less of that item, and they have all the real data to make that decision. Without that data, they're relying on users' memory, which has a tendency to be weighted heavily towards the most recent times. It's kind of that recency bias, and also, they're based upon opinion as opposed to maybe more facts. The other thing is with custodial history, we get to track down where possible damage has occurred and figure out which processes were causing that damage, and then maybe change the process or change the type of asset that we're using during those processes to kind of preserve the asset appropriately. But Cassidy, I wanted to ask you, what comes to mind when I mention asset visibility to you?
Yeah, Tom, actually, on the software side, asset visibility means something completely different depending on the role that the user serves when they log into our software, right? So when people that actually oversee the management of the asset log into software, they want to see those check-in, check-out, all those transactions that happen over the course of a life cycle and see that visibility of the asset at any given time. But there's a few other examples, such as like a financial team might want to hop in to the software platform and actually get an understanding of how many assets have depreciation and what that depreciation report looks like. And there's another example is like a maintenance team. If you have a team that services that equipment that you're leasing out or whatever it might be, the maintenance team would be interested in seeing where it's at and maybe when it's due for return so that they can build their schedule out around that. The key is really to have one platform that serves all of those users to ensure that assets are accounted for efficiently. Okay, and efficiency is actually kind of the second tier of challenges that we see customers deal with. The first is actually starting the RFID asset tracking journey. So Edwin, if you hit the next slide, once you decide to start your RFID asset tracking journey, usually it comes from a variety of issues that pop up. Sometimes it can be you need to save some time, right? Manual inventory takes a long time and it's very difficult to quantify. Whereas there's another reason is just identifying those assets and where they're at and being able to pinpoint exactly who has control of the asset, when they have control of it. And finally is, that financial and maintenance use case. But it is important to understand that the challenges or issues that you're trying to solve, because it might not always come from where you expect. We've seen these challenges brought up to the asset management teams by obviously the internal leadership, the stakeholders of their own company want to get that asset visibility. But there's also been a few cases where external factors have really driven that decision for the company. And out of the stories that I've heard recently, I think Colin has a great one that I was hoping you could share today.
Yeah, no, sure. Thanks, Cassidy. So, I mean, as Cassidy mentioned, companies don't just out of the blue decide to invest thousands of dollars in an asset management platform just for the fun of it. I mean, it always stems from some cause, whether the cause is internal or external. So that much is clear. And as Cassidy mentioned, an application that I've been a part of is, and it may speak to some of the viewers online today, is regarding the wildfires that took place on the West Coast in California that were extremely destructive. It certainly is an unexpected cause, external cause, and it's a cause like this that can bring about the need for an asset management platform. And the thing that many companies should be considering is it's better to have the platform intact, running smoothly, than waiting for some sort of external cause, for instance, like these fires. But a tangible result of a customer that dealt with this is for businesses that work in infrastructure or whether it be governmental contracts, the need to quickly account for your assets at the drop of a hat is extremely important. So in the case of the fires that in California, there's a company that had hundreds of thousands of assets that they needed to quickly account for and report back what was left after the destruction to start to get some sort of damage assessment, as well as the cost associated with all of that. So RFID was not only able to give them real-time visibility of that for their assets, but it also allows for a kind of quick digital audit of everything that they have, and it allows it to be accurate at that nonetheless. So Tom, I think you have an awesome example of an internal cause for the need for asset management.
I do. Thanks, Colin. Yeah, we had a real life customer here that has thousands of assets spread across a multi-acre facility. These assets were required to be verified once in the first 9 months of the year by their accounting department. That gave the accounting group 3 months to build a report and verify any details or anything missing before they actually wrote everything up to senior management. So basically, because the time commitment associated with having to count all of these assets and find them and count them, I guess is the right way to say that, they hired a full-time employee to perform this asset check. That person literally spent every day finding and checking assets for the first 9 months. and then half their time after the first 9 months just helping out, trying to verify the missing assets and trying to gather any details. Then along came RFID. And with RFID, we were able to speed things up tremendously. We put RFID tags on the assets, and the customer was able to use RFID handhelds to quickly expedite the process of finding and counting those assets. What it allowed them to do is allowed them to quickly gather all those details and start the reporting process. And the reporting, of course, was done now in an asset visibility piece of software as opposed to a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. What it came down to is that customer, literally that particular employee at that customer who was dedicated to asset visibility, now only spent a little more than 50% of their time on the whole asset visibility tasks. And the rest of the time was actually spent providing more value-added services to the company, literally helping serve their customers a little bit better. The other key component that we found is the accuracy of the data was much better than any form of manual counting that was done. So the number of manual audits that the accounting group required was way less. So it really helped initiate the audit and complete it in a very timely manner. So if we can move to the next slide, thank you there, Edwin. So let's talk about RFID. So RFID, we say RFID to the rescue. RFID is a very useful tool in helping us gain asset visibility. Remember, RFID is the mechanism to identify the assets quickly and report that data into the software. With RFID, we can do a number of things. One of them is we can locate the assets in seconds. We get a detailed history of the movement of each asset, and we can record the usage and change of custody for each asset. We can quickly complete an audit, and it's way faster than anything we've ever done with any spreadsheets or any barcode scanning. So, Colin, you had another example, I think, where RFID really helped. Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So again, an example of an asset management deployment that really digs into the data. And yes, there's a nice pun here because the application is tracking dinosaur bones. I'll end my comedic career now, but anyway, so this application, not only, for instance, on the excavation site, not everybody is a paleontologist who can quickly identify specific bones in the ground, especially in a quick manner. So once they do identify these bones, the customer was able to tag each bone with an RFID tag to record a variety of different data metrics, which includes the location data, the coordinates, as well as species and anatomical part information of the bone, as well as photos and field notes, schematics, and all sorts of different metadata that when they paired the RFID tag data with other geolocation data that's stored in a cloud database, they can locate other geolocations for bones of a similar type that are located around the world. So it's processes like this that show the power of how, when on site, you can quickly locate an asset. You don't need to be able to, again, have a PhD in paleontology to recognize something in the ground. Once it is identified, you can scan it, identify it, and then from there, access all sorts of other metadata within the software. It allows you to, again, get more value from your application. So, Cassie, I believe you had another application on more of a collegiate campus setting, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, I've got, for the rest of us here in the real world that aren't a paleontologist and dealing with dinosaurs, or even in Tom's case, just alive when dinosaurs were around, we actually have a great use case here at a college in Washington State. And they came to us and they said, listen, we've got 7,500 assets. We're like, perfect. That's exactly what you want to know, is a good quantity to start with. But then they're like, we actually have it spread over 5 different sites and 35 buildings. And in a total of all those buildings, it's probably 300 to 400 classrooms. Holy smokes. All right. So now we see the breadth of why they're coming to us for RFID asset management. And The use case here is that each one of those classrooms would take around 25 minutes to complete an inventory. Once they had the full solution implemented, it actually only took them 5 minutes to complete that same inventory of the assets in that classroom. So it's over an 80% reduction to find all of those things, identify the new location of some assets, move assets back to where they should be. But that wasn't the only benefit. We actually had a side benefit that we didn't necessarily see coming. It turns out that RFID and the right asset management solution is really easy to train for. So instead of spending all that time training for somebody to do an inventory count or an asset count in each specific room and where it might be hiding, projectors over here. Now with the wave of a mobile reader and an app, all it takes is 10 minutes to train new staff. So there's been a huge reduction in training costs as well. But that's after they get that full solution implemented. And I think Tom might be the best one to walk us through this, but if Tom, you have some time, I'd like you to describe how a solution kind of comes together and maybe what our options are. Like mobile, is that the only solution? What's that look like, Tom?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there are definitely options. And when we think of using RFID for asset visibility, there's probably two common strategies we see the most. The most common by far is to tag the assets using RFID tags and use an RFID handheld to track the assets, doing quick audits, locating the assets, and performing change of custody. The benefit of this is it gets started very quickly, and it usually only requires Wi-Fi to the software to start doing, to start the reporting to start happening. In more advanced use cases, we want to automate the RFID reading process by placing fixed position readers at strategic locations around the facility. Now we don't need a person with an RFID handheld to go and read the RFID asset tags. It just happens automatically. This is more automated, but as you would expect, it's obviously way more involved from an implementation side. But no matter what the strategy we use, all of these solutions have three common components. There is the hardware side, which is RFID tags and readers. There's the software side, which is the asset visibility software that controls those readers and manages the data for us and really gives us that view into everything that we're looking for. And then there's the services side. And the services side is trying to make sure that we're picking the right solution, getting it implemented, getting the users trained, and supporting it for the life of the system. So, Colin, I think it's some of your expertise. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the hardware components of the solution set.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the tags because when it comes to tag customization, a key concept that all users looking to get into RFID or understand about RFID and what all of those users should know is that a generic tag, a generic RFID tag shouldn't dictate the direction of your project or your application. So again, a generic RFID tag shouldn't dictate the direction of your project. It should be the application should determine which tag is utilized. I know that sounds maybe obvious to a lot of people, but time and time again, you see users that potentially go with a more cost-effective tag option to save some money on the upfront cost, only end up winding up costing themselves a significant amount of time, headaches because they're missing data, they're missing reads, they're getting inaccurate information. And it's because maybe they tried to go with a more cost-effective tag that wasn't right for the application. I did want to point out one example of how this focus of application first is being actually put into practice in a big way within the RFID industry. And of course, it's that whole Walmart initiative. I mean, you can understand that Walmart identified key product categories that only a select amount of tested tags can work into. That's a great example of how application first that dictates which direction the tag goes. But here at HID, as the tag and hardware manufacturer, we have thousands and thousands of products and SKUs that are designed specifically for a variety of applications that we don't even market because, again, there's so many thousands of SKUs. But if the tag manufacturer is involved in these different applications, we can really help fit the right tag for the right application. Same thing goes on the reader side with our handheld readers, as well as our fixed readers. But as I mentioned, tags and readers are just one component, one piece of the puzzle to an RFID solution. And I believe without the software to drive it as well, I think I'll pass it over to my co-host here to discuss the other parts of the puzzle on the software side.
Yeah, Colin, I assume you're talking about me, but so
Yeah.
I think you know, the important thing about the software side is it's very similar to the tag, where it's not necessarily tag should drive the application, right? Like everything that Colin said is true about software as well. And that's why Great Trunk RFID as an asset management platform was built to be customizable for a variety of businesses, right? You can track anything that we've talked about today, where we're talking about machinery, computers, laptops, iPads, you know, anything that's a valuable asset to you is important to us. And so we built out our platform to be customizable so we can track the right data that helps you make those data-driven decisions. And even though the platform is highly customizable, there's a few businesses out there that want, you know, custom integrations, maybe their own logos and branding. And of course, as a software company, we can offer that. I think it's usually best sorted out through a partner like Levada, where we talk about all those application requirements. And I don't necessarily get into the weeds, but I think Tom can actually walk us through the process of how to get started with Levada and their RFID services.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Cassidy. I would say first and foremost, it's really a process that we go through. And that process is what helps make sure that we're bringing RFID to light in the right way, and that we're hitting the mark and we're not applying the wrong technology at the wrong time. So our process includes making sure that we understand your business objectives and what's really driving the need for visibility. Is it internally driven by senior management? Is it externally driven by customers? What's driving the need for the visibility in the first place? And then based upon what we hear and what we understand about your situation, we would really be looking at developing some options that might meet the requirements. If we're talking about a more automated approach, we might need some time on site to review the facilities, document some of your processes, look at the assets, and determine the best approach. And in some cases, we actually might need to test RFID tags on equipment and verify that we got the right mixture together so we're getting the read performance that we're anticipating. The process usually takes about 30 to 60 days from start to finish for the less automated systems, usually handheld-based operations. The more automated systems where we're putting fixed reader infrastructure in usually takes a little longer. We say typically 90 to 120 days, but that really depends upon the level of automation. But no matter what we're really trying to do is we're trying to set everybody up for success and get that ROI in 6 months or less, and really help pay back for all the hard work that everybody's going to put into the system. So here at Levada, we have an offer that we want to present to you as a webinar attendee here. We know RFID can be an answer, but it's not always the right answer. But there's only one way to find out if it is. We have a team of RFID specialists in our solutions architects group. These folks are experienced at RFID systems and understanding your objectives. We want to offer to each webinar attendee a no-cost discovery call with these experts. On that discovery call, we're going to start asking a bunch of questions around your assets in your organization. How many assets do you have? Where are they located? How do you count them today? How do you verify them? How do you identify them? And what do you use to track them? What that discovery call will do is really help us determine whether RFID is the right approach. And if it is, what are your options that might be useful for it? We'll also be able to help piece together a rough cost and possibly provide you with some areas where ROI can be achieved. You know, our goal is to spend a little bit of time that might pay off for your organization and allow you to get that payback that everybody's looking for when we're implementing any type of RFID or any technology to begin with.
Hey, well, thank you very much, Tom, Colin, and Cassidy for sharing your insights. So now it's time for them to answer your questions. So a few have come in, but please use the Q&A box to add some, and we have 50 minutes to do so. Now, while you do that, we look forward to discussing with you how RFID can help your organization. So if you'd like to take Tom and his team up on their offer and get an evaluation to learn how RFID can unlock assets visibility for your organization and provide a ROI calculation, please send us an email. Let's jump into the Q&A. So a few that came in already, and the first one I think was interesting. So what are constraints or limitations with RFID, knowing like discrete locations like rack, row, bin? Tom, you want to take that first and have the others add to you?
Sure, absolutely. Well, a big part it has to do with how we're actually reading the RFID location in the first place. So we do have customers who have racks and rows, and they put their assets in those different areas. Sometimes we're identifying those locations by putting fixed reader antennas in those particular sections. And in the software, we can say if we read it on a specific antenna, that we know that it's in a particular zone. But in many cases, when people are using handheld infrastructure to actually read the RFID tags, there's a mechanism that we use to say where we're at. That mechanism can be different depending upon how the customer chooses to implement that. That could be reading an RFID tag to say where I'm at. That could be scanning a barcode to say where I'm at, or that could be a selectable item within the software. Cassidy, can maybe you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Tom said is quite accurate. We see a lot of times with those control factors of wanting to know exactly where it is, being able to scan an RFID tag to identify exactly what rack and bin you're currently at and you're currently scanning is very important. I think there's some other features on the software side that we see, and with you know, Colin's got these great mobile readers that actually allow you to walk around and it'll beep and buzz and everything like that as you get closer to the tag. So it's another way to locate it while you're on the move. But as far as understanding or reporting and understanding where it is, we use that drop down, those fields to identify exactly which bin and rack you're at as you check it in or check it out. Yeah.
Great, I'll jump to the next one, and this is related to integration beyond what you talked about today. So one is RFID, using RFID tags for inventory in a retail store and how that would integrate with an ERP. The second one is, can RFID be used with existing warehouse systems like SAP or JD Edwards? You want to start, Tom?
Yep, for sure. So it is very common when we start getting into inventory applications where we are tying the RFID software into something else. Usually the RFID software is not the database of record in those instances. It's usually feeding another system. That other system is typically an ERP platform, or it is a warehouse management system. It could be a derivative of SAP. It could be JD Edwards. It could be any of those platforms that are readily available that we see out there. So it is pretty common when we're feeding inventory data into another platform. Asset data can be a little bit different. Sometimes there is an asset management system that we're feeding data into, but many times those aren't necessarily tied together. Cassidy, how often do you see an asset system tied to another system as a database of record?
Yeah, it's one of the most frequent questions we get. Truthfully, it's when we're talking about that integration, everybody loves the idea of that integration because integration typically means automation. And so it's one of the most frequent questions we get is how can we integrate? And it's also one of the use cases that I talked about earlier, where we're completely open to exploring that integration with you, and just seeing exactly what you're trying to achieve, because there's a lot of things that we can achieve outside of those tools as well. But for integration purposes, we typically will build that connecting piece between the ERP and our software, and then send data as needed. Typically we treat your ERP system as the source of truth, and kind of go from there. So
Yeah, one comment I'd add.
This is a great question.
Yeah, and I mean, just speaking just basic from the architecture side, from an RFID integration, it's the thing is most of those enterprise systems or even WMS systems, they aren't necessarily designed to act as a middleware to handle data like RF data. So, because there has to be a way to bring that data in, modulate the RF data, organize it so that it can be effectively pushed into the right fields, the right dashboards within those systems. So that's where software platforms that focus on RFID on a middleware standpoint compile, collect, organize, and yes, they can be used as standalone platforms, but to what Cassidy was saying, and you can push that data then in an organized fashion into an enterprise system, and it makes that integration much more seamless.
Great. Question about software. So maybe start with Cassidy on this one. The software application will be installed as a software as a service model, or can it be installed at a customer site? What do you see happen there?
Yeah, it's another common question. Typically, what we lean towards is offering it as a software as a service. So our platform is really built software as a service. We're hosted in AWS, right? Great Trunk RFID is. But then when customers come and they want to host it either on their own site or in their own AWS, whatever the case might be, we just work on that solution together, because ultimately we want you to be able to track your assets and gain that ROI that everybody else is experiencing on our SaaS platform. So it's a common question. It's something that we work on solution by solution. Yeah.
So maybe because of Tom's vast experience in RFID, let's start with you here, Tom. So the statement of the customer is accuracy must be perfect, not just much better. What can you tell us about the accuracy of RFID these days?
Well, first and foremost, especially as Cassidy pointed out, I've been doing this a really long time, and early days was not very good. But obviously the technology grew and got better and has evolved. Is accuracy way better today? Absolutely. Is passive RFID technology perfect? No. It'll never be perfect. And why it's not perfect is because these tags have no power to them. They are not a transmitter. They are actually reflecting the energy back. So if you can't get enough energy to those tags to actually get them to respond, then they will not respond. That's why the tag testing and picking the right tag is so important in the application that where Colin was talking about. Our chances get significantly better, and we will tell people that we're 99.5% or greater in most cases, but that doesn't mean we're perfect. That means there's always a chance that we're going to miss something. But the processes we put in place, especially with asset tracking, where we're knowing that we're looking for an expected list, we get 9 out of those 10 items. We can tell you which item we didn't get, and you can use the locate or the Geiger counter function then to go find that particular item, allows you to improve those odds even greater than that 99.5%. Cassidy, from a process standpoint, I was just going to ask you, from a process and software to get your accuracy up, is that kind of the way you typically see it?
Yeah, I mean, it's what we see across the board, honestly. And I was wondering, because I'm not the RFID expert like you and Colin are, but I was actually wondering this myself: is does read range help or hurt your accuracy? Like when you're talking about, Colin, maybe you've got a tag that can read from 50 feet away. Is that actually hurting your accuracy, or how do you pick a tag to be accurate?
Yeah, no, and I was gonna jump in, so that was a good transition in, Cassidy.
I could
So,
tell you were on your toes, man. You were ready to go. Yeah.
well, I was gonna say two things I can point out when that question comes up about RFID accuracy. The first is kind of a tongue-in-cheek response, but it's like, why are you looking or exploring RFID in the first place? Because if your inventory process, your current spreadsheet was 100% accurate, why would you be looking to go away from it? And usually the reason is because of efficiency of collecting the inventory. So even if it is quote unquote 100% accurate, obviously it's not being collected efficiently. And that's where RFID shines, is you collect that inventory efficiently from a speed standpoint. When it comes to accuracy, same thing. I don't know what spreadsheet out there is going to be 100% accurate, especially if humans are involved in manually counting and collecting information. So the other thing that RFID accomplishes is consistency. Consistently walking up with an RFID reader and reading tags is likely going to be consistent from the manual approach of this person takes inventory, this person takes inventory, this person takes inventory. So you're going to get efficiency and consistency with RFID. If I had to jump into the accuracy, argument and discussion, to Tom's point, RFID sensitivity, tag sensitivity has just in the last 5-6 years has just exploded in terms of its performance. To power the tags, which is essentially the sensitivity of the tag, how much power from the reader does it take to turn the tag on, has gone way down. So not only that, but you can read more tags with less power and more quickly. So even if you have a high density of tags, you've got 1,000 tags in a small pallet, it's like, because the tags are more sensitive, you can now power more of those tags quicker and get a response back. So that kind of gets into the weeds of how the readers behave with the tags, but you can see, because as the technology advances, inventory is only going to get more and more accurate. And so that's kind of what I would say is, when you're looking at RFID, it's mainly for efficiency and consistency, and the accuracy is just becoming more and more of a value add as you roll it out.
Great. So a topic we haven't really touched on, and this is a customer who is a large scale warehouse environment. The question is there such a thing as recommended safety guidelines for electromagnetic exposure? And if so, how can a customer ensure compliance with that?
So I can take that. So the answer is yes, there is guidelines that the FCC has stated, and there's been some studies specifically around the in the healthcare environments around hospitals, where hospitals use passive RFID consistently as one of their asset tracking mechanisms. And what they basically state is that the reader can't be on at a certain power level and be within 3.9 inches of a human head for a specific period of time. And so what it really comes down to is how much consistent power are you generating out of a fixed reader antenna, and is it aimed at the human head, and are they basically within about 4 inches of the human head? So when we're putting in fixed reader infrastructure, we are doing a couple things to make sure that we mitigate that. Number one is we're trying to make sure that nobody can actually be within 4 inches of the antenna on a consistent basis with their head. It's not their arms, it's definitely their head, where all the absorption could be potentially problematic. Number two is we don't have those readers on all the time. We basically cycle them on and off, so we're not consistently putting out full power at those antenna locations. And then, the other thing we try and do is we try and actually position the antennas so that they're actually never really within arm's reach, if we can make that happen. So, what you'll see is there are rules about exposure. in absorption rates, but those rules are pretty easy to abide by. And so far, we have not seen any significant issues related to the RFID industry. I think back in probably 2008, 2009 is when a lot of this kind of came up.
Great. Well, let's do one more because I haven't really posed a question to Colin yet. So the question here is it possible to write custom user data on RFID labels? If so, are there any special considerations?
Yeah, so great question. So the data management side on RFID tags and RFID programming, there's a lot of obviously best practices and industry associations that are putting a lot of work into driving clean data. GS1 is a big driver of programming with certain data schemas so that you can quickly identify objects, and the data that you're encoding actually makes sense. Because if everyone was encoding their own system, their own closed loop system, when products are circumnavigating different supply chains, that information doesn't really mean a whole lot. However, the one thing that I can say is when you're looking at user memory, especially if it is a closed loop system, yes, absolutely. You can encode any data to the user memory. Obviously, if the chip or the IC on the tag has the appropriate memory. So that is certainly something that can be addressed with the manufacturer. So you can let us know what data you want encoded there, and it can be encoded appropriately.
Great. Well, with that, we've reached the end of our webinar today. Thank you so much, Tom, Colin, Cassidy, for sharing your knowledge and insights. And thank you to the audience for attending today and for the many questions we received. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.